Self-determination, or Kujichagulia, is a second principle of Kwanzaa. Daphne Maxwell Reid tells us about the talented toad.
Way back a long time ago, before humans came along, and when animals could talk, there was this frog. He didn't look any different from any other frog. He didn't sound any different. The fact is, he was the same as any other frog. But one day, while he was hopping through the forest, he saw a big crowd of animals standing around talking all excited. And naturally, he was curious. So he hopped on over to his friend the rabbit and says, "Yo, Brother Rabbit, what's up?" The rabbit turns to him and says, "Yo, Froggy, check it out. The birds are throwing a singing contest at the Fox Club next weekend. All the best singers in the forest will be there. Now, if you love good singing, you can't miss it." "Oh, I wouldn't miss that for the world," said Froggy. On his way back to the frog pond, the more he thought about the singing contest, the more excited he got. The second he saw his mother and father, he shouted, "Guess what? The birds are throwing a singing contest at the Fox Club next weekend. All the best singers in the forest will be there. And you know what else?" Before they could even open their mouths to say, "What?" Froggy said, "I'm going to enter." Well, they got so quiet you could have heard a fly sipping tea in China. They thought he'd lost his mind. You see, frogs weren't known for their singing. Everybody agreed that frogs were very good jumpers and swimmers and flycatchers. But when it came to singing, well, let's just say they were really good jumpers. Now, his folks could tell from the look on his face that he was serious. Mama Frog loved him and didn't want to hurt his feelings, so she smiled and said, "That's good, son." And Papa Frog loved him too, but he always said exactly what was on his mind. That's why he looked at his son and he said, "That's crazy. You know you can't sing." "I can too sing," said Froggy. And before Papa Frog could say another word, Froggy hopped away to tell the rest of his buddies the good news. But you know what? As soon as he told his friends, they said the same thing his father said. "You can't sing." "I can too," said Froggy. They said, "Prove it." So Froggy closed his eyes. He thought long and hard about the song he wanted to sing. He opened his mouth, he took a deep breath, and let out a big... All the frogs burst out laughing. Fat Frog laughed so hard he fell off his lily pad and almost drowned. Little Skinny Frog laughed so hard he got the hiccups. The old frog shook his head and said, "Oh, that was pitiful. Instead of making yourself look like a fool, why don't you enter a contest you can win, like jumping or swimming or something? Anything but singing." Well, Froggy just smiled and said, "Well, maybe I do need some practice, but I guarantee you by the time that contest comes up, I'll be sounding a whole lot better." Skinny Frog said, "You couldn't sound much worse." And next thing you know, all the frogs were laughing again, but Froggy didn't hear them. He had already gone. And Froggy hopped away to a faraway corner of the forest where he could be alone. With nobody to hear him but the sun, the moon, and the trees, he practiced singing for 3 solid days and nights. And you know what? He got better. By this time, he felt like he was ready, so he headed over to the fox's lair to find out how to enter. And while he was hopping, a flock of robins happened to see him pass by. The head robin called out to him and said, "Hey, Froggy, what's this I hear about you entering the singing contest?" Froggy says, "It's true. I'm on my way to the fox's lair to enter right now." Now it was the robin's turn to laugh at him. The head robin said, "Listen, boy, don't waste your time. You can't even sing as well as a cricket. And you know we can sing way better than that." Maybe so, said Froggy, but I think I'll try just the same. If the robins had anything else to say, he didn't hear it, because he was on his way to the fox's lair. Now, as we all know, the fox is the slickest, quickest animal in the forest, with his mind always on his next trick. That's why when Froggy knocked on the fox's door, the fox was ready for him. "Froggy, my man, come right in," said the fox. "I hear you want to enter my singing contest." "Oh, that's right," said Froggy. "I know you think I can't sing, but..." "Of course you can sing," said the fox. "And if you want to be in my contest, that's cool with me. As long as you got the entry fee, of course." "Entry fee? I didn't know there was an entry fee." "You must have forgot to read the fine print. I really wish I didn't have to charge you, my man, but it wouldn't be right if I charged everybody else and let you in free, now would it?" "No, I guess not," said Froggy. "How much is it?" "Well, since you're a friend and all, how about 20 flies?" Now, 20 flies was big money for a frog. That was a full day's catch. But Froggy wanted to be in that contest real bad, so he gave the fox every fly he had, hopped back home, and kept practicing every night, 5 nights in a row, until finally it was time for the contest. And when that night came, man, what a sight to see! The rabbits and the raccoons and even the skunks were in their finest furs. The robins and the sparrows and the parakeets had on their most colorful feathers. And right there, sitting backstage waiting his turn to sing, was Froggy, just as green and plain as could be. Of course, by this time, Froggy was so nervous and excited, he was about to bust. All his friends and family were in the audience, waiting for him to do his thing. He also knew there were plenty of folks in the audience who couldn't wait for him to mess up, but he didn't care. He had been working on his song day and night, long and hard, so he was ready. He was so ready that even when he saw a few of the birds backstage pointing and giggling behind his back, he didn't pay them no mind. He was so ready that when the fox stepped up to the microphone and started telling the crowd what a wonderful show he had lined up for them, it was all he could do to keep from hopping onto that stage to show them all what he could do. Even so, you can imagine how surprised he was when the first name the fox called out was his. Poor Froggy. No sooner did he jump out on that stage than the audience let him have it. Oh man, they didn't even let him open his mouth before they started yelling. "Get off that stage, you slimy pop-eyed flycatcher! Your daddy was a tadpole and your mama's a toad. Beat it! Yeah, go back to your funky old swamp, fly breath!" It seemed like the only animals that weren't yelling were laughing. Now, Froggy had feelings like anybody else, and being shamed and embarrassed like that, well, it just cut him to the quick. Froggy hung his head. Then he got this lump in his throat so big he couldn't have said anything even if he'd wanted to. Next thing he knew, burning hot tears were rolling from his eyes. I have to tell you, it was a pitiful sight. He didn't know how he did it, but Froggy managed to hop off the stage, out of the Fox Club, and deep into the forest, where he hoped nobody would ever see him again. Meanwhile, back at the club, the fox stepped up to the mic with his big grin on his face and said, "Okay, folks, now that we got the comedy out of the way, it's time to hear some real singing. Let's have a big hand of applause for our first group, the Blue Jays." While everybody else was partying and having a good time, Froggy was deep in the forest, sitting in a clearing, feeling miserable and sorry for himself. All of a sudden, he notices the moon looking down on him from up above. The moon says, "Excuse me, but aren't you the same frog I've seen singing to me every night?" "That's me," says Froggy. But the rest of the animals dissed me so bad, I am never going to sing again. That's a real shame, says the moon, because I know you practiced real hard. Now, I'll tell you what, since there's nobody out here but you and me, why don't you sing your song just one more time? I'd love to hear it. Are you sure, says Froggy. Absolutely, says the moon. And right about then, the stars chimed in and said, oh, us too, yeah. So Froggy closed his eyes. He took a deep breath and let all the sad feelings that were in his heart fill his whole body and come out his throat. It sounded a little something like this. Meanwhile, back at the Fox Club, the rest of the animals were getting ready to vote on who was the best singer. The robins and the orioles and the sparrows were just grinning, because each one knew they were going to be the winner. Now the fox steps up to the mic, he tells the crowd to hush, and just then, that's when they heard it. What's that? Says the rabbit. I don't know, says the bear. But whatever it is, it sure sounds fine. Oh, never mind that noise, said the birds. Let's get on with the vote. Except by this time, nobody was listening to the birds. They had all gone outside to get a better listen to the music they were hearing. And since it was a warm, clear night, and the sound just seemed to float through the air and the leaves, they followed it through the forest, over the creek, up hills and down valleys, until finally they came onto the clearing where Froggy was singing to the moon. Well, let me tell you, the animals had heard some fine singing that night, but nothing like Froggy's song. It touched them so deep in their hearts that right then and there, they voted Froggy the best singer in the forest and promised they would never, ever make fun of him again. Next, everybody started asking him what kind of song he was singing, because like I said, nobody had ever heard that kind of music before. The truth is, neither had Froggy, because he had made it up on the spot. So Froggy says, I don't know, but when I was singing, I had the same feeling you get late at night when you're feeling lonesome and you're watching the moon shining down on deep blue water. Then let's call it the blues, said Papa Frog, and everybody agreed. That sounded right to them. So, that's the story of how the frog invented the blues and proved that the only person who knows what you can and can't do is you. Can I hear an amen?